I believe that you, the people in this room, are the people, and I will add other Christians around the community as well. You are the people who will bring peace to our city and our county. You're the peacemakers. Today we're going to look at that and talk about what that means. Because I believe that if you can learn and choose to trust God, you'll become someone who has so much peace within you, it'll leak onto the people around you. I want to look at two Old Testament stories to set a framework, an understanding of peace. The first one I want to get back into is in Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve sinned. When Eve was responsible for dinner, and now women are afraid to choose dinner up to this day. And so she, I bet Adam had trust issues too from that day forward. Where'd you get this? I'll just take care of dinner. Anyway, so that meal came with stress and anxiety. There was a revelation and an inspiration that occurred with Eve and Adam's sin. And that revelation and inspiration was one of shame. They realized they were naked. They realized they were ashamed. That just sent them over a cliff into guilt and shame. Now, the anxiety of the situation, this is the first situation, and Adam and Eve they're flooded with guilt and shame. They're hiding from God. They're blaming each other. It's the first real tragedy. And I think this is what I've come to conclude about the fall in the garden. My conclusion is that if Adam and Eve had chosen to repent or to turn to God and say, I'm sorry, or at least own what they'd done, I think it would have been a very different story. But I believe Adam and Eve chose punishment and chose to believe God as a punisher so that they would not have to give up their newfound independence in sin. But that created anxiety for all of mankind. Now, people are very anxious about God. And I'm here to tell you, the first encounter with Adam and Eve after the fall in the Garden of Eden, you do not see God behaving in that text the way that everyone believed God behaves. You see God being a restorative person. You see God showing up. You see God being present in their, up to that point, worst moment. So I think there was anxiety, but I also think that God's reputation that he got out of that moment was not earned. I don't think God came to punish Adam and Eve, because if he had, we wouldn't be here. I don't think mankind would exist if God was as we believe him to be. If you jump into Judges chapter 6, you'll find out that the nation of Israel had rejected God. They had made up their own imagination about God was like and decided to live without him, and that had not turned out well. All the McDonald's were closed, and so were the Walmarts, and everyone was suffering. Excuse me. The land was very oppressed. The Israeli people, they weren't Jews until after Babylon, but the Israeli people, Hebrews at the time, were ashamed. They were hiding. They were in fear. They lived under a whole lot of anxiety. So they called out to God. Anytime's a good time to call out to God. And if you feel like you're in trouble and you really need God to save you, that's a great time to call out to God. It's a great time to call out to God earlier than that, too. So they call out to God, and God sends the angel of the Lord. That's what the Bible tells us. Now, I believe that the angel of the Lord, often referred to in the Old Testament, is probably what is known theologically as a pre-incarnate Christ. It's Jesus showing up before he's born into the world. Because Jesus said, I am. He says, before Abraham was, I am. So Jesus gives us the indication that he's always been, and we believe that that's so. So I believe that the angel of the Lord that shows up to Gideon is probably Jesus. But there are people who would argue with me, and I'm not here to argue that point. What I am here to show you is this. The angel of the Lord reached out to Gideon, and Gideon, in all his bravery, was terrified. That was his first thought when he met the angel of the Lord, was terror. And his first thought in Judges 6 is that God's going to kill me. God showed up to visit me, and now he's going to have to kill me because I've seen him. That was literally a Hebrew line of thought. And so Gideon was terrified. And so what the angel of the Lord does to help Gideon calm down, chill, is Gideon builds an altar, and he gives food on it and so forth. He builds an altar, and then the angel accepts the sacrifice. And then this is where we encounter Judges 6:24. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it, "The Lord is Peace." The Lord is peace. Yahweh Shalom is what the Lord is peace is translating. Yahweh Shalom. Yahweh was the name of God in the Old Testament. It was a name of God that Hebrews wouldn't say aloud for fear of offending him because they had this idea about God. And Shalom is a word for peace. And what I want you to see in the story, and why it's important to the Sermon on the Mount and what we're about to talk about, is that Gideon is being called to be a judge. And what a judge is in Judges is someone who goes to war against the things that are destroying the people of God. That's what a Bible judge is. A Bible judge goes to war for you, not against you. And so Gideon is going to be called, our little insecure, anxiety-filled Gideon is going to be called to take on an army. In the end, he's going to take on an army of 500,000 Midianites with 300 dudes. Those are not good odds, if you wanted to know. And how God starts this campaign is by declaring over Gideon, Yahweh Shalom. The Lord is peace. So this battle that Gideon's about to begin is founded in peace. Not warmongering, not anger, not frustration, not anxiety. Peace. God starts at peace with Gideon. So I want you to think a bit about this idea of shalom. It's very important. It's very important to us. Steve and I were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, how that shalom and worship go hand in hand. And I want you to think about the fact that I know you hear this a lot from the front of this church, but I'm just going to keep saying it. God is for you. And one of the things I love to say to people, because I love the reaction, is I want you to know something about God today. Right now, this moment, I want you to know, you ready? God is in a good mood. I love to say that because people kind of freak. Because our ideas of God in Western culture are actually pagan. They're not Christian. And we don't think of God as the God who's Yahweh Shalom. We think of God like a Zeus or a Greek god who is easily angered and frustrated and throws temper tantrums. We think of God in those terms in Western culture, and that is a lie about God. God is a God of peace. In fact, he's more than a God of peace. He is Yahweh Shalom. What does shalom mean? Well, the Bible says this in Isaiah. The prophet Isaiah tells us, I sworn. This is what God said. This is in the Old Covenant. This is God speaking to Israel. So God hasn't changed. God isn't grumpy in the Old Covenant and nice in the New. He's always been the same. And he says in Isaiah, through Isaiah's lips, I've sworn that I will not be angry with you. I will not rebuke you. The mountains may depart. The hills may be removed. But my steadfast love shall not depart from you, and my covenant of peace shall not be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. Shalom. Okay, you guys heard the expression in the last several years, safe place? Have you mocked the expression? Okay. Shalom means safe place. But like for real. Like not pretend. It's not a place where like, if you hurt my feelings, I will no longer feel safe. It's a place where God is peace and God is there's safety, there's happiness, there's friendliness. It applies to your welfare, your health, your prosperity, and your peace. When you have Yahweh Shalom, when you know God is peace, you are at peace. You don't have anxiety. You don't have the stress. You don't have the worries because you have God who is peace within you. He inhabits you with peace. This is important. Because what I'm about to teach you today is how that you are peace to this world. But that peace you have is not your own. The peace you have is actually the peace of the Father. He's how peaceful He is. Have you ever been around someone who calmed you? They had a calming effect on your life, and they weren't carrying a billy club or something. They just had a bing, you're calm now. It wasn't like that. It was like they just calmed you because they were there. And so take that to about an infinite number and realize that God is peace. And when He's in you, He gives peace, and circumstances don't matter because God is peace. In fact, heaven is situated in Revelation chapter 5. Heaven is situated on a sea that is still, that doesn't have a ripple in it. And it just signifies how God has everything at peace in His presence. So the Bible tells us, or Jesus goes, the passage we're going to look at today, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, He tells us, blessed, happy are those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. So now we take this idea of a God who is peace, and a God who inhabits you, and that peace leaks into you, through you, and out of you. And now here's Jesus saying to you, blessed are those who are peacemakers. Blessed are those who work for peace, who make peace, because they're like their dad. They are children of God. So I want to talk about peace and how we get there. And I want to start with the idea of peace and control. Because I think control is an illusion. I think we live in a world that tries to achieve peace through control. And I hate controllers. I hate it when people try to control me. Do you hate it when someone tries to control you? Am I the only one? When I figure out someone's manipulating me, I'm now angry. Are you that way? That's why I don't watch the news anymore. I don't like being manipulated, okay? I get tired of controllers. And I have worked very hard to get rid of my need to control. I am not there yet. I still do things that try to control the people around me, the people I love. The more I love someone, the more I'm going to try to control them because I want to keep them safe and I want to keep me safe. But I'm learning that control is not the way to peace. And control doesn't even work. It's an illusion. Now I'm entering this step in my ministry where I am trying to move from giving people advice and help them control their world to a place of asking the right questions so they can let go of control and trust God. And I think that's the power of the gospel as we'll walk through today. But I'm here to tell you ask you the question, what brings you peace? And if bringing you peace is the people around you doing what you say, you're a controller. You're not at peace. You're just trying to control your world, and it won't last. However, if you're on a track where you're learning to trust God when things are out of your control, well, you're in a much better place. But if you are walking into a place where you are holding and hosting and enjoying the presence, therefore the peace of God already in your life, and that's the source of your peace, you're already in the advanced class. Rather than trying to bring peace in your world through trying to control your family, control your neighbors, control through your city officials and those kind of things, what if we move to a place of trust? What do you mean trust? Well, what if we trusted God? What if I don't have to have all the answers? What if I just have to have my Father? What if I don't need a solution for you? What if I don't need to fix you? What if instead of having those fears, instead of trying to control people, what if we trusted that our God is peace and that our God has authority and has the ability to work things out for our good? One of the things I love about God is God can take the worst tragedy and wring so much good out of it, you think God started the tragedy. But he doesn't. He takes anything the enemy throws at him and turns it into something good. The devil is the most frustrated entity in all of eternity. Everything he tries to do, God turns into something awesome. He even killed the Son of God, and look at how that turned out. And so, if you learn to trust God, all heck can break out around you, and you will have shalom. Safe, happy, well. And you probably doubt me, but I want to tell you something that may be hard to receive. Jesus always had shalom. Even on his way to the cross, he had shalom. As he's being nailed to the cross, he says, Father, forgive them. How could he do that? He had shalom. He was safe. He was happy. He was well. Michael, they killed him. And look what happened. He rose from the dead. That is trusting the Father, and that is what leads into peace. And many of you are probably facing things right now that it's really hard to trust God, and I get it. I have tried to work out God's will for him many, many times. Because God does take care of me, but his calendar is very different than mine. My deadlines are 30 minutes a day, a week out. He works on like millennia schedules. Peace is about trusting God. It's about trusting God's process. It's about trusting that, as the psalmist said, though he slay me, I still will trust him. And Paul actually quotes that in Romans 8 when he talks about us never being able to be separated from the love of God. It's about trusting that no matter what happens in life, God has got me. And if something does happen that ends my life, it doesn't matter because God still has me. And I can expect better. I can expect reward. I can expect blessing from God. So Jesus goes on as he walks through this idea of peace and how we're peacemakers and how we address things of peace. And he says, so if you are presenting a sacrifice at the altar in the temple, you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, run and hide and gripe about them to as many people as possible. Leave your sacrifice there at the altar and go and be reconciled. Go and be reconciled to that person. Then come and offer your sacrifice to God. One of the things that I am trying to teach children of God in this stage of my ministry is the power that is available to us. How that we are, every one of us, powerful people. That we have the power to make choices. No one can bully you if you trust God. They can say what they want to say, do what they want to do, but that doesn't have to move you or shake you in any way. And we have all kinds of biblical and historical examples of people who believed themselves to be able to make choices when all of their choices were taken away. And so I want you to know that you're free. And here is one of my favorite verses about freedom because Jesus says, okay, if you're going to give an altar and you think if someone has something against you, they have the problem, I want you to go and be reconciled to them. And what is he doing? Your lens of judgment and punishment takes that text and turns it into a law or a rule or a weight or a burden. And you begin to think, okay, well, I have to go make it right with Job before I do my thing. No, that's not what Jesus is saying. Here's what Jesus is saying. You have the power to bring peace to your relationships. That's what he's saying. You can do it. How? Through confrontation. And Jesus is saying to you, you have the power of confrontation. You can go and be reconciled. You can confront somebody, talk to somebody. You can think of peace as not a life that doesn't have any conflict in it, but a life in which peace is won over conflict. When Jesus Christ went to the cross, he won the victory. Not over you, but for you. And that's what confrontation is. Confrontation is winning the victory of peace for you and for them. It's a win-win. I know you're thinking it doesn't always go well. That is true. Because not only are we a room full of free people, we're also a room full of broken, hurting people. And so I just want you to begin thinking of the idea that peace comes through this concept of truth. And so we have to learn how to confront and tell the truth that we're experiencing. And so you need to know that conflict is a good thing. Confrontation is a good thing. It's not always a welcome thing. I don't always love it when my wife is telling me how she's experiencing me. I mean, seriously, I'm wonderful. No, I'm not. I can be a little selfish sometimes, and maybe a lot some other times. It's not always comfortable, it's not always welcome, but it does indicate it is the path toward victory. And that's how you have peace in your home. Avoidance will kill you. It will kill your relationships. It literally may kill you. People commit suicide because they cannot deal with the conflict in their life. It will destroy your marriage. It will destroy your business. It will destroy your job. We have to get good at confrontation. Loving and kind and gentle and humble with confrontation, but we have to do it. Because that's how you make peace in a world that's chaos. And you, my friends, carry shalom in you by the presence of God. You can carry peace into your world, but peace doesn't look like avoidance. Peace doesn't look like smiling when everything is awful. Peace tells the truth. Peace loves enough to confront because the Father loves enough to confront.